Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Still International Women's Month with the theme Accelerate Action. This morning, we continue our series of interviews with exemplary women from our country. In the studio with us, we have a Nobel Prize winner. No, nominee. She's going to win soon. A global education advocate and a diplomat who has she has made significant strides in leadership, gender equality, and international peace mediation. Joining us in the studio is Zuriel Oduwole. Oh, wow. Congratulations on your Nobel Prize nomination.
Thank you so much.
For us, it's a win already. Yes. And we have been talking about we'll be celebrating the International Women's, not Day, the entire month. And we've been bringing phenomenal women on the show to just discuss and let their story inspire others. So really, it's about your story, because someone is watching right now and is wondering, how can a young lady like this have already had such impact? And then you met with the president, I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
This current president?
Yeah. No, you haven't met?
No.
Oh yeah, we're looking forward to that. But what was the journey to becoming the Nobel Prize nominee? How did you get that Nobel Peace Prize nomination?
Couldn't even tell you. My journey started off completely differently. My journey, I started with filmmaking. That's what people always laugh at. I do education advocacy now. I started filmmaking when I was 9 years old. I was doing a school competition back home in the US, and they were asking kids from across the country to create an essay, do a skit or a documentary on a topic in history. And so I was 9 years old. I thought this would be fun to enter, use my spare time doing this. And so I entered the competition. As a 9-year-old, you can imagine, it's like 40-page essay. I was like, let's put that option to the side over there. To do a skit or a play, I was one person. So other students were doing things in groups. By myself, I was like, I don't want to do like a one-woman show type thing. And so I thought, okay, documentary. My family had this like little, very tiny family camera in our house that we'd use to create like home videos and stuff like that. So I thought, you know what? Documentary, that's what I'm gonna do. So I entered the competition, and the topic for the year I entered was revolutions in history. And I like to, when I can, try and be different from everybody else. And a lot of my classmates focused on the usual revolutions. We focused on the American Revolution,
the Spanish,
the European, all kinds of revolutions. But I wanted to be very different. And so I got on my computer, did some research, and I found out that the Ghana Revolution was actually one of the most successful held here on the African continent. So that kind of became my topic. And so I went to Ghana. I had to go to Ghana to film some scenes for the documentary. I know, I had to go to Ghana to film scenes for this documentary. And when I was there, I noticed for the first time, I actually got to see kids who were out of school. Because we'd be driving around filming, and it would be like 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, regular school hours. And I would see kids out on the streets chasing after cars, trying to sell things. And you can imagine, as a 9-year-old girl, I went to school every day back home in the US. And so I looked at it and I was like, how comes these kids who were my age, a bit older, how comes they're not in school? And it's one thing when you open up a newspaper or a magazine and you read about this issue of out-of-school kids, because everyone hears about it, 200 million out-of-school kids, etc. But to actually see it, I think as a child, to see someone else who looks like me, not in school, I was like, well, what can be done about this? So I did the documentary, went back home, did the competition, but it was that experience that kind of still stuck with me. And so I was brainstorming. I was like, what can I do to try and make a difference? So a year later, at 9, yes, at 9. Wow. At 9, you can ask my parents what I was thinking back then. But did some research, figured out, okay, what can I do? And then a year later, when I was 10 years old, I formally started my education advocacy work. I started a project called Dream Up, Speak Up, Stand Up. And the original purpose was just to go into schools and try and speak to students about the importance of staying in school and getting a good education, because education is incredibly important. And so to date now with that project, just in schools with students, I've spoken to over 51,900 youth. And 23 countries now, actually. I just added my 23rd country, got back from Seychelles a few days ago. And so I've also done it in Botswana, Ethiopia, Kenya, South Africa, and of course, here in Nigeria. And then that was kind of how the advocacy began. And then from there, it's now grown into my foundation, the Dasusu Foundation. So D-U-S-U-S-U. If you put the puzzle pieces together, it's basically just an acronym for Dream Up, Speak Up, Stand Up. So I've continued that project. Now with the foundation, we have that's the platform I now use to do most of my advocacy work. And then along the way, I kind of figured out, okay, I can speak to students to stay in school, but there's also things that can be done at the policy level. And so I started to meet with world leaders since I was 9. I met my first world leader just to kind of begin my education advocacy project to talk about anything, policy initiatives, youth development, education. And so I've met now over 36 presidents and prime ministers. I started here with my work on the African continent. So I've met people like the president of Egypt, president of South Sudan, president of Liberia, president of Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and it's kind of grown. So now I've also done work in the Caribbean region, people like the prime ministers of Jamaica, prime minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, and also even the Pacific Island regions. Because education, this idea of keeping kids in school and education, it's not just something on the African continent. It's a global thing.
So that's really nice. Congratulations once again. So for you to be able to do this so far, or to have even at 9, even gone to Ghana for a school project competition, you must have really supportive parents.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, and for them to support what you're doing, finance it and stuff, that's super amazing. So how do they feel right now with everything, the impact you're making, for the Nobel Prize nomination? Like, when they even heard about it, like, can you just tell us, how they felt?
Yeah, absolutely. My parents have been not yet. My parents have been incredibly supportive. You mentioned when I first started off, like, you can imagine being 9 and went up to my parents, Mom, Dad, I have to go to Ghana. And it's like, for what? I was like, school competition, I have to go there to film some stuff. But my mom, my dad, and I have 3 younger siblings. They've all been incredibly supportive on this journey. I mean, the one thing I'll say that you mentioned, like, the financing of it, for me, like, I'm a student, 0 budget, right? My parents have 4 kids. So no, for real, a lot of it was like trying to find sponsorships and partnerships and doing that kind of work. So it wasn't just like there's no financing of it. But they've been incredibly supportive, and a lot of the lessons they taught me and my younger siblings when we were younger, I think is kind of what has helped me to take on that mindset when I was 9 to say, what can I do to help others? Because they taught us, like, if you see something and you think you can make a difference, then you should at least try. You should at least try. And so that's kind of the mindset that we grew up with. And you mentioned the Nobel Peace Prize nomination. How did this is the funny story of how I found out. Not forget how my parents, how I found out. So I was at home. My dad was overseas he was doing some work. And whenever any of us travel, we always call in every single night to do check-in, like, hey, how was your day? Oh, good, this and this and this. And so he called, like, one night. It was like 2 weeks ago now. And he was just like, oh, like, how's everything? We're like, oh, good, school's good, this is good, everything's good. What about you? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm fine. Everything's good. And then we get to the end of the call, and he's like, okay, so if I were to ask you guys, like, what are some pretty big awards out there? And this was like still like in the Grammy, the Emmy seasons. We were like, oh, there's the Oscars, that's pretty big. The Grammys is pretty big. He's like, yeah, those are big, But if you were to think globally, what's a major global award? And we were like, oh, that's easy, like Nobel. Like I think there's 6 categories I learned or something like that: literature, medicine, chemistry. I was like, oh yeah, Nobel. And then he was like, yeah. So Zuriel, this year you've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and literally, no joke, that's how I found out. So my dad actually knew before I did.
Were you excited to find out? How did you feel? Was it fulfilling to find out that you're finally getting this nomination?
Like, you can't even still feel it.
Trying to get those. I think it was shocking. It was complete. No, because I woke up that morning, I wasn't thinking, I wasn't thinking any of that. And not to say that I wasn't aiming for that, but that wasn't my focus. That wasn't why I was doing the work that I was doing. So when I heard about it, it was like, who? Like, why? Like, how? Like, what exactly happened here? Still, we're like, who, what, when, where, how, and all those questions. Because, I mean, first of all, I'm incredibly grateful just for the nomination. Just for the nomination itself. I mean, I've been doing this work now for 13 years, since I was 9. And I honestly did not think people were paying close enough attention to even consider this denomination. I mean, I think of all the past recipients. You've got Kofi Annan, you've got President Carter, Nelson Mandela. It's just like
people.
It's just the nomination in itself. I'm grateful for. I'm so thankful for. But it's just a reminder to keep going. There's still a lot of work that has to be done.
So true.
So Zuriel, there are many.
We would have to take a break. But when we return from this short break, Mariam is going to go through with a question. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.